Great. Well, thank you very much for coming today. I am going to start the afternoon by taking it easy and asking you all to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do, and then we'll move on to some questions. So why don't we keep it super easy? Start with Ben and move down the line.
Hi. Hi, everyone. My name is Ben King. I'm SVP for Distribution and Business Development at a service called DAZN. DAZN is attempting to change the way that people watch sport around the world. Sports has typically been watched in pay TV bundles for the last 25 years. We are taking premium sports and making them more affordable and more accessible to consumers so they can watch anytime, anywhere, anyhow. We operate in 9 countries around the world on 4 different continents. We're available on 96% of connected devices, all available for a low monthly fee or a reduced annual plan if customers so want to consume it that way.
Hi, everybody. I'm Steve Miller-Jones, Vice President of Product Strategy at Limelight Networks. We are a global content delivery network. Our aim is to help our customers, including at DAZN here, securely manage and globally distribute their digital content. The explicit aim there, of course, is actually we're providing a high-quality service. We're trying to all delight our audiences so that they enjoy watching the content, consuming the media that's been distributed, and come back for more, be it AVOD, SVOD, TVOD, whatever. So our job is to distribute content on the internet at high quality for our customers and to delight their audiences. So I look a little further out into the market about what's happening next and drive those insights back into the product team and try and influence from the market and from our customers and from the consumers. As Anna Maria very rightly said, the platform users and device users, not necessarily consumers. What should we do for them? So that's what we do at Limelight Networks. I'm really pleased to be here. Thank you.
Andrej.
My name is Andrej. I'm from Slovak Telekom and Czech T-Mobile. I'm responsible for content, TV content acquiring, including the sport content, linear, non-linear, VOD, you name it. Maybe short regarding our position on the market. In Slovakia, we have 0.7 TV households on 2 million fully paid TV market. In Czech Republic, we have 0.1 on 4 million market. Bearing in mind that we started 3 years ago is not bad, but important is to underline that Czech is fully or mostly free-to-air market, and paid TV represents 0.5. So we are a significant player in Czech Republic as well, with the fast growing platform on the market. One of the reasons behind is the ownership of exclusive sport. We have a lot of experiences with acquiring them and with losing them as well. So maybe we can describe it later.
Ajey.
I'm Ajey. I'm the CEO of Norigin Media. We're a Scandinavian Norwegian company. We provide TV technology in the OTT video streaming space. We've been around for over a decade when streaming became a word. Our expertise is in the entire value chain of preparing video distribution to the presentation and user experience. Enough about Norigin Media, but about a quick word on Scandinavia and the Nordics. I'm a big proponent. We're from there. Television viewing, wherever you're from. I'm sure Holland is lovely, Anna Maria, but so is the Nordics. A lot of things happen there. I didn't know that HBO launched in Holland first. But then again, in terms of the Norwegian market, the device penetration, the network, the power to buy and consume content, understanding English, most of these things that are a tick box in Holland as well, is what makes the Nordics a perfect playground to launch and consume streaming services.
Great, thank you. Well, our published or bulleted topics today for this 40-minute session, I think would probably cover a 3-day conference, but we'll try our best to resolve it in the remaining 35 minutes. I thought maybe we could start with Andrej, given you are, I guess, in Slovak, a market-leading operator, and in the context of this world we've been talking about with many more services, some of them over-the-top sports services, some of them more traditional in your channels. It'd be good to get from you as an operator your view and what your opinions and your strategy is for dealing with this diverse content offer and how you're treating these different content offers and the free-to-air channels in your market and the others. Just start there.
Important is to know that Slovakia is surprisingly fully paid TV market. What does mean that free-to-air broadcasting or terrestrial, if you want, is already dead. Even in that certain that our domestic commercial broadcasting leader is not penetrated via free-to-air, via terrestrial. It's penetrated only via satellite, cable, and IPTV, which really big thing. That's important context of the situation. We have exclusively all sport you can imagine: English Premier League, Spanish Serie A, Italian La Liga, German Bundesliga, ATP, WTA. But this ownership of the sport is a weapon on one hand, but threat on the second hand, because you can get the subscribers, but it's something like conditional access, because the subscribers expected to acquire new sport and expected not to lose this. That's why we spread our exclusive content strategy to different genres, and we have not only exclusive sport, but we have exclusive documentary channels. Channel, by the way, is BBC Earth. We localized this only for us for 5 years in Slovak and Czech market, and BBC Earth is a very good documentary channel, is available only in our Telekom environment. And then we have created our own kids channel and our own music/culture channel. So if happened that we lose the Champions League in 2018 in favor of Orange, our main competitor, and Orange launched a huge ATL and internet campaign in August, 2 weeks before the start of new Champions League season, we at the same time increased the prices. Our yearly database growth remain untouched. And one of the reasons was exactly this balance between sport and non-sport exclusive content.
Right. And so you talked about creating your own channels there and working with partners to create local channels. And in terms of your approach to the large kind of growing slate of OTT service providers who want to have alliances with distribution platforms, you're open to them as well, and you're integrate with them.
Yes, we are open. Our strategy can be called like this super aggregation strategy, as mentioned several times before. We understand under this super aggregation to technical integrate all these VOD giants into our platform, and in ideal world, within one subscription, allowed our subscribers freely to move, to swap from one environment to second, based on the business model. Business model would be based on time spent to watching in particular these VOD services. But there are two main barriers playing in our favor, bearing in mind Netflix, Disney Plus, Amazon Prime, and this kind of giants. First is the language barrier. The localization costs enormous amount of financial sources, and it's not easy to localize these titles for Slovak and Czech market, even in situation that our markets are, from historical reasons, strongly habited to dubbing, not to subtitling. And the second is a very significant power of the local content. Taking in consideration that 70% of the viewership is based on the local content, so local commercial and public broadcaster, is not easy to compete to this enormous power of the local content.
Right. So, if I move on to Ben, as the kind of I guess the representative on the panel for OTT service providers, you, I believe, have a couple of alliances with pay TV operators, but also are obviously out there in the market on 96% of devices, I think you said. But for you, I guess there are synergies with operators in many cases, and you could see working with them in many markets.
Yeah, I was fascinated to watch your presentation before, because it reminded me how fragmented and complicated the world of distribution is today. It makes it very hard for people like us because we need to form alliances with so many different companies. Ultimately, we think the customer will choose the way of accessing the content that's most applicable to them. And it kind of means we need to put our content and our service at wherever a customer wants to consume it. I think in the early world of apps, it was quite easy. You went to the App Store and you went to Google Play and you had worldwide distribution. We now have pay TV companies who are not just running linear channels, they're running app stores on smart TV boxes. You have app stores who are trying to move up the value chain and created aggregated digital channel services. You have mobile and broadband telecoms companies creating new digital television services. You have services like Netflix going completely direct to the consumer. Consumers can access content in more ways than they ever have, which is great for the consumer. In the meantime, we have to work with many partners around the world to deliver the best possible experience by whichever means they want to access the sport that we are showing.
Right. Yeah. And I guess that starts to sort of start bringing in our other members on the panel in terms of delivery and technology. And I guess having you here and talking about sport is a great one, because I as a technology layman, would just say that sport is obviously one of the harder ones to deliver, given the fact that it's live and its requirements on bandwidth and other issues are much greater, I would say. If, I guess, Steve, moving on to you, I always think you guys are in such a great position, because it doesn't really matter who wins in the OTT battle as long as you're the one carrying the stuff that's going out there. But enabling these sort of high quality, reliable experiences is I guess what you're about. And how what do you see the challenges today in making sure that happens, and how can you make sure that happens?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I think there are effectively three areas I think I'd probably point out. First of all, as a partner in the delivery chain, in the value chain, if you like, we're expected to be a high-quality part of that distribution chain. So our intent in running our business is to focus very, very firmly on how do we improve our software, our business, our processes, the way in which people interact with how we offer those, to make them as seamless as possible, to provide the most we can out of our own infrastructure. We have to make our own CapEx decisions, for example, about how to deal with capacity. We have to make our own decisions about where to invest our R&D time in the software. But the ultimate aim of that side of it is to ensure that when we get the request for the content, we're giving out the best response we possibly can. The second side of that, of course, is really the shared responsibility. So you said there, I don't probably care who wins in the terms of which service the consumer uses. Well, in some ways, yes, in some ways, no. It's a shared responsibility in the market that we have both availability of devices and availability of ample capacity to both serve the content out of my servers, for example, and distribute it through the networks to the end user. There has to be a genuine desire of both the service provider, like Limelight, and the ISP and carriers to actually deliver what can be seen as their core revenue earning traffic, or what might be seen as a net additional traffic that is taking their own money away from them.
Right.
So that's where it starts to get really confusing and complicated, because it doesn't look like a net win for everybody. So in fact, it has to be a net win for the consumer. That's perhaps the most complicated part of a global distribution strategy, and also one of the most difficult parts of a local distribution strategy, because the politics will be different country to country. So working together in partnership, finding a way to look at partnerships for making sure the capacity needed for whatever next year's Olympics, or whatever big sporting event might come up next, working in partnership to ensure that consumers get what they're looking for is really critical. So if we think about it that way, it's easy to find the partnerships that work for gaining the access to the distribution channels. And I think finally the third part that we really can't forget is, as a consumer, we see great statistics everywhere about who's watching on a TV, who's watching on a tablet, who's watching on a phone. Well, actually we're all watching all of those. one of the part that we also have to focus on is the user experience, the UX journey. The amount of money that's spent on acquiring a consumer or a customer or a user of my platform. Don't squander that. It's really important that those experiences work well. So we also focus on how can we help secure data channels, provide interactivity. Can we help do packaging and distribution of content? Do you want to produce HLS and Dash in 59,000 bit rates? Maybe not. Maybe it's easier for you to do it once and have someone in the value chain do it for you as it's distributed. So I think if you look at the three things, how efficient can we be at providing quality? How do we work in partnership and relationships to ensure actually the customer can access what they're looking for? And how can we help provide that overriding experience that's going to keep the consumer coming back and make your cost of acquisition worthwhile? That's a key part too. Right. So I think those things really come together from a platform service provider. Sometimes you're just going to put bits on the wire and see you later. It's really not that simple, and that's not where we provide any value. That's not right. We obviously do provide value in putting bits on the wire, but we provide more value in offering a platform for helping deliver that final service to the consumer.
Yeah. I remember, I'll come on to you in a second, Ajey, but I remember a particularly kind of vibrant time in terms of OTT. Soon after, I think it was soon after Now TV had launched, and their MD, still their MD, Gideon Katz was there, and a small but significant audience of overseas kind of imminent kind of operators asked him the question, what's the biggest challenge you have? And I think they were expecting some real kind of complicated answers, and all he said was, I just got to make sure the stream gets to the customer. And they laughed and said, you serious? He said, I am deadly serious. He said it's the one thing that I can't just sort of say to, I can't find one person who's responsible and pull him out of the office and say that you got to make sure that happens. He said, because it isn't one person, there's lots of different people.
To play off that point, Jack, I mean, Gideon has a hard job doing that.
Yeah.
He's doing it with content that was typically recorded 6 months ago. And if I watch it 1 minute later than my friend watches it, it's not the end of the world.
Yes.
On this panel here, we take content from some cameras in a Champions League final in Madrid. We suck it up to servers of an OTT service provider. We encode it. We deliver it out to a CDN who delivers it out to an ISP who delivers it to a consumer. That has to happen in 25 seconds or less. The complexities of live and live sport go way beyond sort of traditional recorded television.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, another piece to say, make sure the stream gets there. Look at the maturity of the market as well. There are enough emergent standards, ATSC in the States and other places, HBB TV, perhaps more across Europe, the standards for Dash and for CMAF, the encoding standards. It's not the Wild West that it was maybe 5's not too many, but 10 years ago. The fact that there is maturity in how should we go about doing this, that's a common shared language and a common set of problems being solved in a common way helps to ensure that there is a commonality in distribution and success is more obvious. We're all looking at the same things. How do we enable the user interactivity in ad delivery, right, and deal with GDPR at the same time? Actually, there are standards that describe how to do it for us. And we're all working together to define those standards. So that's a really important part.
Yeah. So, Ajey, I'm probably going to now oversimplify your business, but you go, a lot of your business goes beyond that bit of it as well. So you talked about the user experience, the UI, and other things. So for you, you've got probably an even broader view of the elements that are required to be delivered well to ensure the best experience.
Right, like you said, the value chain's long, but the technology is just the means to the end. I think oversimplifying it helps us achieve what we need to achieve. I'm not a technologist, I'm not an engineer, I run a technology company. I think it's important for us to accept the situations of the market as it is, because when we talk about fragmenting markets, as far as the technology goes, simplifying it, there are three, your presentation showed Apple and Google on the top of the value chain, as well as Microsoft, it should be there. These are three companies that have done things as far as the video ecosystem goes across many things, whether it's the video format, whether it's the encryptions, whether it's the devices. Just because there are three different formats and three different devices, it doesn't make it complicated. those are the 3 devices that you need to reach if those devices and formats reach the audience, because that's what you want to reach at the end of the day. And if Microsoft isn't doing a bloody good job, ditch them or work with them. It depends on what you need to do. Introducing one single format to address the complicated nature of where we are today isn't the way to think about it. I think of it saying we just need to have 2 separate formats and 2 separate technologies that we need to follow until they exist. And that's how we look at it. I think I can be a big proponent of the Apple phone, not understand one thing about the Android TV, which is the biggest topic in many, many conferences, but that's not my business. That's my personal business. I don't understand Android, and I will never own an Android phone unless they get, really, really well. Sorry, Google. But unless there's too few people who don't pay for those services, which then goes into the big hybrid models, et cetera, as long as the industry makes money through these devices, we as technology companies and providers need to provide it, whether we like it or not. Simplifying it does not mean simply transforming digital aspects, just thinking that technology one way will solve every requirement that there is to reach the consumer isn't the way to think, and that's not how we think about it.
Yeah, but I guess in a way, I know on this panel there's some sort of discussions we've had already about the complexities of the technology, and I think there's some points we're going to talk about around that. But from a consumer point of view, there are complexities about technology, whether that be I can get it from how do I get it from my TV, which device do I pay, and what other things do I do? But it's also just about, quite frankly, the simplicity of whether I want to have 2 different subscriptions or 3 different subscriptions, whether I want to use Amazon channels because it enables me to do single billing for multiple services or a single interface. And I guess with Apple launching Apple channels, what I find interesting is I just get more pain stories from people who are launching these services. I get pain stories that Apple's requirements for Apple channels are beyond anything they've ever seen before in terms of how they need to deliver the content and the assets they need to deliver with it. With Amazon, I get these stories about Amazon channels that it takes 3 months to get our content on the service. There's no one to talk to. I get messages back that virtually say computer doesn't understand. And all I get from people is how, okay, they might be delivering me subscribers, but it's incredibly painful. So, and obviously you could go OTT and then the discussions are more like what we talked about. The complexities are around kind of what formats you use. So, I guess I'm not sure what the question is there, but these complexities don't seem to be getting any easier in terms of both the way to get to the content and the device and the apps and the technology. And are there things that you feel, I guess, from a operator point of view, a service provider point of view, and a technologist that you think will happen or need to happen to help simplify?
Well, maybe I'll pick it up from some of the technology side. So maybe the introduction of new formats or new codecs in itself is relatively simple. That's a place to start. So if you look at something like HEVC or promoted AV1, and if you can get through the issues around licensing content with those codecs, it's going to offer us a way to produce more high-quality content with a lower footprint and enable us to distribute it more straightforwardly. And if we follow some of the other standards such as CMAP, for example, for OTT, it gives us great frameworks that we can use to reduce latency, to Ben's point about how do we want to consume live sports, and ensure we've got integrated ads and we've got a way to deliver to multiple devices with different formats, and we can start from there. Right? That piece is relatively simple. Now, the complexity of getting into a platform like Amazon or Apple that you're pointing out, sure, there may be a number of steps, and I don't know what those are, but underlying all of those commercial issues, I think, is a reasonably well-rounded set of technologies that is driving us forward. So I think from one perspective, the digital transformation that we've seen and are seeing happening is moving people to an environment where there are enough compute resources available for them to utilize. There are enough commonly understood ways of interacting with interfaces to build services and solutions and so-called pipelines that our lovely DevOps teams are going to use and constantly update everything all the time. There are enough of those things that are commonly understood to apply the standards to and drive simplicity into the value chain. Now, how an individual company behaves once you've got your produced output, maybe that's a different issue.
Yeah.
But there are certainly ways to help solve the technology issues throughout the value chain. And I think we're continuing to focus on making them simpler and more effective.
And I guess, I think you said you're on 96% of devices, so it can't be a big, huge problem for you. I don't know.
I don't see the biggest problem being how we get content onto devices, if I'm really honest. And if you look at what Apple's allegedly doing with Apple TV, what they'll be doing is increasing the quality so that they can deliver what they deem to be an Apple-like experience to customers. They did the same with the iTunes Store for music and actually started monetizing music for the first time. They did the same with the App Store. They will help content providers raise their game and deliver better customer experiences at the end of the day. It will just take time for those delivery mechanisms to be updated. I think for me, the advantages of watching sport and content through an OTT digital platform are very clear. We are regularly broadcasting 40 live sports at any one time. It is impossible to broadcast 40 live sports through linear television. So digital allows us to offer more shelves of more content to more customers at the same time. Customers are not, in this day and age, able to sit down for 3 hours and watch a live sport at the time it's happening. They need to be able to have the choice of watching it live. Some of them want to watch it as live, but on a delayed basis. Some of them want to watch it in extended highlights. Some of them want to watch it in shortened highlights. Some of them want to watch it on a download basis. OTT services can fulfill all of these needs. I think the biggest challenge for us all is how does the backbone of the internet allow tens of millions or hundreds of millions of people to do all of that at the same time? And for me, that is the biggest restriction today, and that's the biggest problem that we need to solve. I do have faith that that's being solved, though. Just last week, Apple had WWDC. They announced a new video technology of theirs called low latency HLS, which is promising to reduce the latency of live video delivery to 2 seconds. It's clear this will behave like Moore's law, and I think this will improve with every year that passes, and ultimately the customer will be the winner. More choice, less cost, watching on their terms, however they want to watch.
Exactly this, from our perspective, is the challenge: how to deliver the right content to the right household or customer, or technically taken to right set-top box in our situation. We have approximately 200 linear channels in our portfolio, plus VOD service. Every channel has a 7 days archive. So let's imagine this enormous amount of hours for every subscribers. And our hard data shows that something like, can I call average set-top box need is 25 channels per month, and the maximum is 95 channels per month. So that's and we have 200. So the question is how to deliver this right 95 channel to the right set-top box. And the answer is the recommendation and the personalization of our offer and of our delivery model. And this is very good how to prevent the churn, because our research shows that then more personification there is, and then more recommendation there is, then less churn we are facing. So that's direct connection between these two things.
Right. Okay. I will open it up to the floor. I guess we've got some time left. But are there any questions at this stage from people in the audience? No. We should talk a little bit about local content, as I know it was part of the planned session. Now, Andrej, you said at the start, I can't remember the numbers, but I think 70% of your base were using local, and I think the tribal nature of sport probably local is important as well. I guess the importance of that. And less so, we don't think that we need to get drawn into the kind of the EU quota side of thing, is going to be an important part of your kind of, well, not battle, but your struggle with any of the global players in the market.
Yeah, that's one really interesting thing, because we are dealing on Czech and Slovak market. Maybe you know we were in the past one state. We have been separated, and now it's Czech Republic and Slovakia. But it is difficult to imagine two more different markets, and Slovak and Czech. Slovakia is a fully pay TV market with 95-96% of pay TV penetration. Every household in Slovakia has 95 channels, and Czech Republic is 70% of free-to-air. Every household has maybe 15 channels, and this is a totally different story in Czech Republic, because the main role of pay TV operators are allies, firstly, and secondly, the main role is put as much as possible the good and exclusive content, especially sport, behind the paywall. And it's not important, or O2 or Orange or V. Important is behind the paywall to weakening the free-to-air environment, because from 4 million households in Czech Republic is 3.5 million not paying for TV subscription, not paying for pay TV. So there's a huge potential there. And the first and most important thing is somehow to improve the pay TV environment, getting all important content behind the paywall.
Right. And I guess from a sport point of view, I always find the global kind of sports OTT, whenever our friends at Amazon and others are doing things with sports rights, it kind of, because of its very blunt global approach, and because of the the fragmented nature in terms of the value of sports rights in each market, because of all the cultural differences, I guess you have to be local. You're in 9 markets, am I right? And you have to treat everyone with different tools and rights.
Yeah, we have a blend of local and international content I believe, in every country that we operate in. I think doing just one or just the other is a challenge. I think you really cap your addressable audience. I think by being a multi-sports broadcaster, you are able to migrate customers, for example, who are fans of the Japanese J-League, to now come and watch European content. In fact, our viewing figures for the Champions League final in Japan were huge 2 weeks ago, despite that being broadcast at, I think, 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. in Tokyo. If we were a single sports broadcaster just broadcasting local sports, I think we would ring fence our audience. I think we would limit our reach. And I think we would not be able to push customers to other sports that we think they might be interested in. So we think a combination of local and international is important. And ultimately, sports fans love great sports stories, typically. And great sports stories can be happening anywhere on the planet. We want to bring whatever sport they want to watch to them, however they want to watch it.
Right. Ajey, I'm not sure how the balance of your clients sit within the Nordic region and outside, but the Scandinavia has been kind of faster than kind of pretty much any European territory in terms of its transition to SVOD and its transition to on-demand viewing. If you look at where all the big hits are going they're either going to HBO Nordic, Netflix, Viaplay, Seymour, all through their on-demand environment. And what's your experience, maybe even as a consumer, in terms of how the services are treating local and using that in the tool to kind of win up against Netflix and so on?
Yeah, I think I read a report that Netflix isn't doing as well as they should be doing in Scandinavia, considering we all speak English, we can afford it, we don't think it's expensive, and the quality of the service itself is great. HBO, on the other side, personal opinion, absolute bullshit quality, but really good content, which makes you want to go there nonetheless. I don't think one content wins or the experience wins. I think all of that needs to be there, but consumers will reach the content whether they like it or not. Whether there's a way or not, but because there are premium services, piracy has come down, accessibility to services have become very easy, and finding content is becoming quite easy in the right channels, which allows business sustainability, not just for the technology providers, but also for service owners as well. We have services, half of our services are in Scandinavia. We work with most of the broadcasters in Scandinavia, and we work with paid TV operators in Europe. We work with sporting content providers, the Sky Bundesliga in Germany and La Liga in Spain. We work with operators with hundreds of TV channels. Sports is of course it's very different from other forms of content, but it needs to be I think the vision of it is always owned by the owner of the service. We just provide the technology to make sure that vision can be portrayed in front of the consumer the way they design it. It's none of our business, but to make sure that the consumer sees how it's done. Now, sports can also be found as a part of a long list of TV live channels as well. So, it depends on how a consumer wants it. Sports is also consumed in a pub. It depends on how the consumer wants to consume it. When latency and topics like that are coming about, there are two aspects to it. First of all, people who consume a lot of internet and digital services, which is very commonplace today, they accept a certain level of delay. They accept that sometimes 3G in the UK doesn't work. Does not happen in the Nordics. People understand when you play sometimes when somebody screams ahead of a goal just because they're watching it on broadcast. These are issues, but the consumer is not stupid. They understand that these are the price that they have to pay of watching video on the internet because the internet wasn't built for video, and the amount of video consumption that's happening, and that we're trying to solve the bigger story around the world in terms of how video consumption is going to become the commonplace and normal. I think that's going to take a lot of time. To answer a previous question that you asked, Crossing the Chasm is a book that you should find. There are the people who adopt new technologies really early on in the value chain. They understand that there are issues, and 3 years down the line, 4 years down the line, when Apple makes things hard, they make things easy over a period of time.
Great. Well, I'm afraid that's it. Time's up. Your early reluctance means I can't offer out for questions anymore. I've got clear time's up sign here. If maybe you could join me in thanking our panelists for their time today, and we'll see you outside.
Let's go.